Why is your hand broken? And why are you still working? The undercover hotel owner froze when he saw the black maid struggling to change sheets, her bandaged hand trembling with pain. But what shocked him wasn't just her injury. It was what she whispered next, words that revealed a secret so dark, it would change everything he thought he knew about his own hotel. Stay with me until the end, because this story will leave you stunned. Before we begin, take a second to like this video, hit subscribe, and comment where you're watching from. Enjoy the story. The Grand Metropolitan Hotel stood like a beacon in downtown Atlanta, its marble lobby gleaming under crystal chandeliers. Guests in designer suits checked in, while others lounged in leather armchairs, sipping champagne that cost more than most people made in a week. Everything looked perfect from the outside, but perfection, as Marcus Thompson was about to discover, was sometimes just an expensive mask hiding ugly truths. Marcus had built his hotel empire from nothing. Starting with a single rundown motel 30 years ago, he'd clawed his way to owning 12 luxury properties across the Southeast. The Grand Metropolitan was his crown jewel, the hotel that put him on the map as one of Atlanta's most successful black business owners. But success had come with a price. These days, Marcus spent more time in boardrooms than walking his own hotel floors. That morning, something felt different. Maybe it was the way the front desk manager stuttered when Marcus called about occupancy rates. Maybe it was the nervous energy in the assistant manager's voice when discussing staff schedules. Whatever it was, Marcus decided to do something he hadn't done in years. He was going undercover in his own hotel. Dressed in worn jeans, a faded flannel shirt, and work boots that had seen better days, Marcus looked nothing like the polished businessman whose photo hung in the hotel's executive offices. He'd grown out his beard, traded his expensive watch for a cheap digital one, and even practiced changing his posture. To anyone watching, he was just another maintenance worker hired for the day. The service elevator carried him to the 15th floor, where the hotel's housekeeping operations buzzed with quiet efficiency. The hallway stretched long and pristine, doors marked with brass numbers that caught the soft lighting. But as Marcus stepped into this hidden world of his hotel, he noticed something that made his stomach tighten. The housekeeping staff moved like ghosts, heads down, voices hushed. There was a tension in the air that felt wrong, a heaviness that didn't belong in a place built on hospitality and comfort. That's when he saw her. She was struggling with a cart loaded with fresh linens, trying to maneuver it around a corner with obvious difficulty. Her left hand was wrapped in thick white bandages that extended from her fingertips to her wrist. Every movement seemed to cause her pain, but she kept working with a determination that both impressed and troubled Marcus. He watched from a distance as she approached room 1507. The woman fumbled with her keycard, nearly dropping it twice before finally getting the door open. Inside, she began the methodical process of stripping and remaking the king-size bed. What should have been a routine task became a careful choreography of avoiding pressure on her injured hand. Marcus found himself drawn closer, pretending to check electrical outlets while keeping her in his peripheral vision. She was probably in her early 40s, with graying hair pulled back in a neat bun and kind eyes that seemed to carry more weight than they should. Her name tag read Patricia Williams. As she worked, Patricia hummed softly under her breath, a gospel hymn that seemed to give her strength. But Marcus noticed how she winced every time she had to grip something with both hands, how she paused occasionally to steady herself against the bed frame. When she moved to the bathroom to clean, Marcus seized his chance. He approached her cart and called out softly, "Excuse me, miss?" Patricia turned, startled. For a moment, fear flashed across her face, quickly replaced by the practiced smile of someone who'd learned to hide their pain. "Yes, sir? Can I help you with something?" "I noticed your hand," Marcus said, his voice gentle. "That looks painful. What happened?" The question seemed to catch her off guard. She glanced nervously down the hallway, then back at Marcus. For a moment, he thought she might not answer. Then, in a voice barely above a whisper, she said something that sent chills down his spine. "It don't matter what happened. What matters is I got 3 kids to feed and rent due tomorrow." But then she added something else, so quietly Marcus almost missed it. "Besides, Mr. Stevens says accidents happen to clumsy people. Says I should be grateful I still got a job. Marcus felt his blood pressure spike. Stevens. David Stevens was the hotel's general manager, a man Marcus had personally hired 2 years ago based on glowing recommendations and an impressive resume. A man who was supposed to be running the Grand Metropolitan with the same values Marcus had built his entire empire on. Stevens said that to you? Marcus asked, keeping his voice carefully neutral. Patricia's eyes widened as if she'd said too much. She shook her head quickly. I shouldn't have said nothing. Please don't tell him I was complaining. I need this job. You weren't complaining, Marcus assured her. You were just talking. But tell me, how did you hurt your hand? Again, that nervous glance down the hallway. Patricia lowered her voice even further. There was an accident in the laundry room 3 days ago. One of the industrial washers. The door slammed on my hand when I was loading sheets. Broke 2 fingers and messed up my wrist real bad. Marcus frowned. Industrial accidents were serious business. There should have been incident reports, workers' compensation claims, medical leave protocols. Did you see a doctor? File an accident report? Patricia's laugh was bitter and short. Mr. Stevens said it wasn't that kind of accident. Said I was being careless, not paying attention. Told me if I wanted to keep my job, I'd wrap it up and get back to work. Said if I made a fuss about it, there were plenty of other people who'd love to have my position. The words hit Marcus like a physical blow. This wasn't just negligence. This was deliberate, calculated cruelty. And it was happening in his hotel, under his name, to his employee. How long have you worked here? He asked. 8 years, Patricia replied, a note of pride creeping into her voice despite everything. Started right after my husband passed. This place, it's been good to me mostly. I work hard, don't cause trouble. But lately, she trailed off, shaking her head. Lately what? Patricia looked around again, making sure they were alone. Things been different since Mr. Stevens took over. The way he talks to us, especially us black girls, makes us feel small, like we ain't worth nothing. And if we speak up about anything, suddenly our schedules get cut, or we're written up for things that never mattered before. Marcus felt a rage building inside him that he hadn't experienced in years. This wasn't just about one injured employee. This was about systematic abuse happening right under his nose, in the business he'd built as a symbol of black success and opportunity. Patricia, he said carefully, if you could change things here, what would you want to see happen? She studied his face for a long moment, as if trying to figure out why this maintenance worker cared so much about her problems. Finally, she said, I just want to be treated with respect. Want to do my job without being afraid I'll get fired for speaking up when something ain't right. Want to know that if I get hurt at work, somebody gonna take care of me instead of blaming me for it. Her voice grew stronger as she spoke, the fear giving way to something fiercer. And I want my kids to see their mama working somewhere she can be proud of, not somewhere she got to hide bruises and pretend everything's fine. Marcus nodded slowly, filing away every word. Patricia, what would you say if I told you things were about to change around here? She gave him a sad smile. I'd say you sound like a good man with good intentions, but good intentions don't pay the bills or keep the lights on, and they sure don't protect people like me from people like Stevens. As Patricia returned to her work, Marcus stepped back into the hallway, his mind racing. He'd come here expecting to find minor operational issues, maybe some customer service problems he could address with additional training. Instead, he'd uncovered something far more serious, a cancer growing at the heart of his most prized possession. But Patricia Williams had no idea that the maintenance worker she'd just confided in was about to turn her world upside down. And David Stevens was about to learn that some secrets were too big to stay hidden. Marcus spent the rest of that day moving through his hotel like a man seeing it for the first time. Every interaction between management and housekeeping staff took on new meaning. Every nervous glance, every hurried conversation that stopped when supervisors walked by, every forced smile that didn't reach tired eyes. He positioned himself in supply closets and maintenance areas, places where the real conversations happened, places where people like Patricia Williams thought they were safe to speak the truth. What he discovered made his stomach turn. In the laundry room, he overheard 2 housekeepers whispering about missed breaks. Can't even use the bathroom without Stevens timing us, one said. Yesterday, he wrote up Maria for taking too long in the supply closet. She was having chest pains, but he said she was faking it. Near the service elevators, he watched Stevens himself stride past a housekeeper struggling with a broken cartwheel. The woman called out for help, but Stevens kept walking, muttering something about lazy excuses loud enough for everyone to hear. But it was what Marcus witnessed in the employee break room that pushed him over the edge. He was crouched behind a vending machine, pretending to check electrical connections, when Stevens walked in with his assistant manager, Craig Morrison. 3 housekeepers were eating lunch at a small table, Patricia among them. Her bandaged hand rested carefully on the table while she used her good hand to eat a sandwich. "Well, well," Stevens announced, his voice dripping with fake concern. "How's that hand doing, Patricia? Still milking that little accident for sympathy?" The room went silent. Patricia looked up, her jaw tight. "It's healing, sir. Doctor says another week or 2. "Doctor?" Stevens laughed. "What doctor? I don't remember approving any medical leave or workers' comp claims. I went on my own time, sir. Paid for it myself." Morrison snickered. "Maybe next time you'll pay more attention to what you're doing. These accidents don't just happen to careful people." Marcus watched Patricia's face flush with embarrassment and anger. Her co-workers stared at their silence stretched until Stevens spoke again. "You know what? Food? Afraid to make eye contact? The Patricia? Since you're so concerned about your little injury, maybe you should take some unpaid time off. Let that hand heal properly. Can't have clumsy employees making the hotel look bad." "Sir, please," Patricia said, her voice barely steady. "I need the hours. My kids." "Your kids aren't my problem," Stevens cut her off. "Your performance is, and lately, your performance has been questionable at best." He pulled out his phone and made a show of typing. "There, you're off the schedule for the rest of the week. Maybe that'll teach you to be more careful." Patricia's face went pale. Marcus could see her calculating in her head, figuring out how she'd pay rent, buy groceries, keep the lights on. Her lips pressed together to keep from saying something that would make things worse. After Stevens and Morrison left, the break room remained silent for a long moment. Finally, one of Patricia's co-workers, an older woman named Betty, reached across the table and squeezed Patricia's good hand. "Honey, that man ain't right," she whispered. "The way he treats us, especially you girls. It ain't right." "Betty, don't," Patricia warned. "You know he got cameras everywhere. He hears everything." "I don't care," Betty said, though she lowered her voice further. "My grandson's a lawyer. He tells me about these discrimination cases. What Stevens is doing, it's illegal. You could sue." Patricia shook her head. "With what money? Against a fancy hotel with fancy lawyers? They'd destroy me, Betty. Make sure I never work anywhere decent again." "But you got witnesses," another housekeeper, Maria, chimed in. "We all seen how he treats you different, how he talks to you. Writes you up for things he lets other people slide on. Y'all think I haven't thought about that?" Patricia's voice cracked with frustration. "You think I want to take this? But I got 3 babies at home. My oldest is trying to get into college, needs me to co-sign for loans. My middle one needs glasses, she can't see the board at school. And my baby, he's got asthma, needs his medicine every month." She stood up, cradling her injured hand. "I can't risk losing this job. Not for pride, not for justice, not for nothing. Sometimes you just got to swallow your pride and keep moving." As Patricia walked out, Marcus felt something break inside his chest. This woman, this strong, hard-working mother, was being systematically destroyed by a man Marcus had trusted to run his hotel with integrity. And she felt so powerless, so isolated, that she'd rather endure abuse than risk fighting back. That evening, Marcus sat in his penthouse office, staring out at the Atlanta skyline. His hotel glittered below him, a monument to everything he'd worked for. But now it felt tainted, corrupted by the poison Stevens had been spreading through its halls. He pulled out his phone and called his lawyer, James Richmond, a man who'd helped him navigate every major business decision for the past 15 years. "Marcus, it's late. Everything all right?" "Everything." "James, I need you to pull David Stevens' employment file. Everything. His background check, references, previous employment history, and I want you to look into the hotel's HR complaints from the past 2 years." "Okay," James said slowly. "Can I ask what's prompting this?" Marcus told him everything. Patricia's broken hand, the lack of incident reports, the systematic harassment he'd witnessed. By the time he finished, James was quiet for a long moment. "Marcus, if what you're telling me is true, you've got serious liability issues. Discrimination, workplace harassment, failure to provide a safe working environment. Stevens isn't just being cruel, he's opening you up to massive lawsuits." "I don't care about lawsuits right now," Marcus said. "I care about Patricia Williams and every other employee being treated like garbage in my own hotel. I understand that, but we need to be smart about this. If you fire Stevens tomorrow without proper documentation, he could claim wrongful termination. And if Patricia and the others decide to sue, having fired him might not be enough to protect the company." Marcus rubbed his temples. "So what do you suggest?" "Give me 48 hours. Let me dig into Stevens's background, review the HR files, maybe even hire a private investigator to document what's been happening. We need to build an airtight case. James, while you're building your case, Patricia Williams doesn't know if she can pay her rent. She's working with broken bones because she's afraid to speak up. I can't wait 48 hours. "Then don't wait," James said. "But be strategic about it. You're the owner. You have every right to conduct surprise inspections, review employee files, interview staff members. Just make sure everything you do is by the book." After hanging up, Marcus sat in the darkness for hours, thinking about Patricia's words. Sometimes you just got to swallow your pride and keep moving. How many of his employees felt that way? How many were suffering in silence because they believed no one with power would listen or care? The next morning, Marcus arrived at the hotel before dawn. He'd traded his undercover maintenance outfit for a sharp business suit, but kept his beard slightly longer than usual. To most staff members who didn't know him personally, he'd still look like just another corporate executive. He made his way to the HR department, where files were kept in locked cabinets behind the main desk. Using his master key, he began pulling records. What he found made his blood boil. Patricia Williams' file was thick with disciplinary actions, all dating back to Stevens's arrival. Written up for taking too long on rooms, for allegedly being rude to guests, for missing work when her son was in the hospital with an asthma attack. Each write-up was signed by Stevens and Morrison, but Marcus noticed something telling. The earlier reports, from before Stevens's tenure, painted a completely different picture. 8 years of exemplary service, commendations from guests, perfect attendance except for documented family emergencies. But Patricia wasn't alone. File after file told similar stories. Hard-working employees with spotless records, suddenly accumulating violations after Stevens took over. And Marcus noticed a disturbing pattern. The employees being targeted were overwhelmingly black women. Meanwhile, employees who fit Stevens's apparent preferences, younger white staff members, had files free of disciplinary action, despite complaints Marcus found buried in customer feedback forms. He was building his case when he heard familiar voices in the hallway. Stevens and Morrison, arriving early for their shift. Marcus quickly closed the files and slipped into an adjacent supply closet, leaving the door cracked just enough to hear their conversation. "Did you see Patricia's face yesterday?" Morrison was saying, laughing. "Thought she was going to cry right there in the break room." "Good," Stevens replied. "Maybe now she'll understand her place. These people think they can get comfortable, start making demands. Sometimes you have to remind them who's in charge. Think she'll quit? Probably not. She needs the job too much. But a few more weeks of reduced hours, maybe another accident or two, and she might decide to move on voluntarily. Saves us the paperwork of firing her." Marcus gripped the door handle so tightly his knuckles went white. Another accident or two. Stevens wasn't just negligent. He was actively planning to harm his employees. "What about the other one, Betty?" Morrison asked. "She's been asking too many questions, talking to the younger girls about their rights. Muddy Betty's close to retirement anyway. I'm sure we can find reasons to encourage her early departure. Maybe some performance issues, missed shifts due to her age. Corporate loves it when we trim the older, more expensive employees." They moved past the supply closet, their voices fading. But Marcus had heard enough. This wasn't just workplace harassment anymore. This was a calculated campaign to force out employees based on their race and age, using intimidation and manufactured accidents as weapons. He waited until they were gone, then pulled out his phone. But instead of calling his lawyer, He called the one person whose opinion mattered most to him, his mother, Dorothy Thompson. At 82, Dorothy had cleaned offices and hotel rooms for 40 years before Marcus became successful enough to take care of her. She'd raised him alone after his father died, working multiple jobs to keep food on the table and dreams alive in her son's heart. "Marcus, baby, you never call this early. Everything okay?" "Mama, I need to ask you something. If you were still working, still cleaning hotels, and someone was treating you the way Patricia Williams is being treated, what would you want the owner to do?" Dorothy was quiet for a moment. "Patricia Williams? Baby, what's going on?" Marcus told her everything, his voice breaking as he described Patricia's broken hand, her fear, her resigned acceptance of abuse because she couldn't risk losing her job. When he finished, Dorothy sighed deeply. "Marcus, you know what your grandmother used to tell me?" She said, "Dorothy, when you see someone being stepped on and you got the power to help, you don't got a choice. You got a responsibility. But Mama, if I move too fast, if I don't handle this right..." "Baby," Dorothy interrupted. "That woman is working with broken bones because she's scared. Her children are watching her come home hurt and defeated every day. You think she got time for you to handle this the careful way?" Marcus closed his eyes. "What should I do?" "You do what's right, and you do it now. That Patricia Williams, she deserves better. They all do. You built that hotel to be something proud, something that lifted people up. Don't let some small-minded man turn it into a place that breaks people down." As Marcus hung up the phone, he felt something settle in his chest, a certainty that cut through all his doubts and strategic considerations. His mother was right. Patricia Williams and every other employee deserved better, and they deserved it today, not after 48 hours of legal maneuvering. He straightened his tie, checked his reflection in the supply closet mirror, and stepped out into the hallway. It was time for David Stevens to meet the real owner of the Grand Metropolitan Hotel. Marcus walked through the executive hallway with purpose, his footsteps echoing off the polished marble floors. The weight of what he'd discovered pressed down on his shoulders, but his mother's words rang clear in his mind. Patricia Williams deserved justice, and she deserved it now. He found Stevens in his office, feet propped up on his desk, laughing at something on his phone. Through the glass partition, Marcus could see Morrison lounging in a chair, both men completely relaxed, unaware that their world was about to crumble. Marcus knocked once and entered without waiting for permission. Stevens looked up, his smile fading when he saw the stern expression on Marcus's face. "Can I help you? I don't believe we have a meeting scheduled." "We do now," Marcus replied, closing the door behind him. "I'm Marcus Thompson. I own this hotel." The color drained from Stevens's face. Morrison's mouth fell open, his body going rigid in the chair. For a moment, the only sound was the hum of the air conditioning. "Mr. Thompson," Stevens stammered, scrambling to his feet. "I wasn't expecting you. If you'd called ahead..." "I don't need to call ahead to visit my own property," Marcus cut him off, "especially when I'm investigating reports of employee abuse and workplace discrimination." Stevens's nervous laugh sounded forced. "Employee abuse? Sir, I think there's been some misunderstanding. We run a tight ship here, but everything we do is by the book." Marcus pulled out his phone and opened the voice recording app. "Is that so? Then you won't mind explaining why Patricia Williams is working with 2 broken fingers and a damaged wrist, with no incident report filed, and no workers' compensation claim processed." The silence stretched, until Morrison finally spoke up. "Sir, that employee was injured due to her own negligence. She wasn't following safety protocols." "Really?" Marcus's voice was dangerously quiet. "And what protocols would those be? The ones that require employees to work through serious injuries or risk losing their jobs?" Stevens tried to regain his composure. "Mr. Thompson, I understand your concern, but Patricia Williams has been a problematic employee for some time. Her injury was unfortunate, but..." "Stop talking," Marcus commanded. Both men fell silent. "Yesterday, I heard you tell that woman her children weren't your problem. I watched you cut her hours as punishment for getting hurt in your facility. I listened to you discuss planning more accidents to force her out." Morrison went pale. Stevens's mouth opened and closed like a fish out of water. Marcus continued, his voice gaining strength. "I've reviewed the personnel files. Employees with years of perfect service suddenly accumulating violations after you arrived. A clear pattern of targeting black employees, older workers, anyone who doesn't fit your narrow definition of acceptable. He stepped closer to Stevens's desk. But what disgusts me most is the systematic way you've terrorized people who depend on this job to feed their families. Patricia Williams has worked here for 8 years. 8 years of dedication, and you've made her feel like she has to choose between her dignity and her children's welfare. Stevens finally found his voice. Sir, I was just trying to maintain standards. Sometimes tough decisions. Tough decisions? Marcus's voice rose. Breaking an employee's hand and then blaming her for it is a tough decision. Cutting hours from a single mother because she reported an injury is maintaining standards. He pulled out a folder and slammed it on the desk. These are incident reports from our other properties. Real incident reports. Documentation, medical care, follow-up, support for injured workers. That's how we maintain standards while treating people with basic human dignity. Morrison tried to speak. Mr. Thompson, maybe we can discuss. The only thing we're going to discuss, Marcus interrupted, is your immediate termination. Both of you. Security will escort you out in 10 minutes. Stevens's face flushed red. You can't do this. I have a contract. This is wrongful termination. Marcus smiled coldly. Actually, your contract includes a clause about maintaining company values and treating employees with respect. You've violated that clause repeatedly. My lawyers will be filing a full report with the Department of Labor about the unsafe working conditions you've created. He pressed a button on Stevens's desk phone. Security to the general manager's office, please, and send Patricia Williams up here when she arrives for her shift. Stevens stood up, his composure finally cracking completely. This is ridiculous. You can't prove any of this. It's her word against mine. It's not just her word, Marcus replied. I've been here undercover for 2 days. I've seen everything, heard everything, and I've got recordings of you discussing how to manufacture more accidents. The security team arrived, 2 professional-looking men in dark suits. Marcus nodded to them. Gentlemen, please escort Mr. Stevens and Mr. Morrison from the building. They're no longer employed here. As they led the 2 men away, Stevens shouted over his shoulder, This isn't over, Thompson. I'll sue you for everything you're worth. Marcus watched them go, feeling a weight lift from his chest. But the real work was just beginning. 20 minutes later, there was a soft knock on the office door. Patricia Williams stood in the doorway, her bandaged hand held carefully against her body, her face showing confusion and worry. Ma'am, you asked to see me? Did I do something wrong? Marcus gestured to the chair across from his desk. Please sit down. And no, you haven't done anything wrong. My name is Marcus Thompson. I own this hotel. Patricia's eyes widened and she started to stand. Oh my God, I'm so sorry, sir. I didn't know. If I said anything yesterday. Patricia, Marcus said gently, please sit. You're not in trouble. In fact, I owe you an apology. She sat back down slowly, her good hand gripping the chair arm. Sir, yesterday, when you were working on the 15th floor, you spoke with a maintenance worker about your injury. That was me. Patricia's face went through a series of emotions, confusion, recognition, fear, embarrassment. But you said, I was investigating reports of problems in the hotel. I had no idea how serious those problems were until I spoke with you. Marcus leaned forward. Patricia, I want you to know that David Stevens and Craig Morrison are no longer employed here. They were terminated this morning for their treatment of you and other employees. Tears began forming in Patricia's eyes. Sir, I didn't mean to cause trouble. I need this job. You didn't cause trouble, Marcus assured her. You exposed trouble that was already here, and your job is safe. More than safe. He opened another folder on his desk. I've been reviewing your employment record. 8 years of exemplary service, guest commendations, perfect attendance except for documented family emergencies. You're exactly the kind of employee this hotel should be proud to have. Patricia wiped her eyes with her good hand. Mr. Stevens said I was problematic, said I was lucky to still have work. Mr. Stevens was a liar and a bully, Marcus said firmly. He was systematically targeting hard-working employees like you because he enjoyed having power over people who couldn't fight back. He pulled out a check and slid it across the desk. This is back pay for the hours he cut from your schedule, plus compensation for your medical expenses and pain and suffering. The hotel's insurance will also cover all your medical costs related to your injury. Patricia looked at the check, her mouth opening in shock. "Sir, this is too much. I can't." "You can, and you will," Marcus said. "But that's not all. I'm offering you a promotion to head of housekeeping. You'll oversee the entire department, with a significant salary increase and full benefits." Patricia stared at him, tears flowing freely now. "I don't understand. Yesterday I was afraid I'd lose my job, and today, justice is being served," Marcus replied. "You've shown incredible strength and character under impossible circumstances. You kept working, kept caring about doing a good job, even when you were being treated terribly. That's the kind of person I want leading my housekeeping team." Patricia Williams walked out of that office not as a victim, but as a leader. Her broken hand would heal, but the strength she'd shown through her darkest moments would never be forgotten. Marcus Thompson learned that true leadership isn't about corner offices and profit margins. It's about protecting the people who make your dreams possible. Sometimes the most powerful person in the room is the one who keeps showing up, even when the world tries to break them down. If this story moved you, share it with someone who needs to hear it, and remember that your voice matters too.